Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Welcome.
And Kadar King, Melissa Longo, and Heather Jordan. They're going to be taking over the show today. They don't need us.
So it's ladies' night.
Cirroc, shall we?
Okay.
We'll show ourselves out then.
All right. Well, we'll let the ladies take care of it.
Oh, what a night. Okay, I could go on.
All right. Have a great show, guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Keep their ears open.
Yeah, keep them clean.
Ears open.
All right.
In my vocal ears, yeah.
Bye, guys.
Good show.
All right.
Well, hello, ladies.
Hey.
Hello.
So we are discussing Second Sight today.
Second Sight. That's right. Great episode.
Yeah, you know, I was doing my research and I was like, oh, I remember that episode. It was awesome. So, I actually love the actress who played Fenna.
Agreed.
She's in Eureka. So I loved that show. So seeing her on DS9, because I'm familiar with some of her other work, I was like, oh, awesome. You know?
That's right. What's her name? I want to, Sally.
Her name is Sally Elise Richardson Whitfield.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. She does a tremendous job in this episode. And at first when the guys were like, hey, you guys going to review Second Sight, I was like, oh, it's like the mushy, romantical, girly episode, but that's fine. We can go there. But I think she does a tremendous job. She's so present.
Great. Yeah.
I was really moved by the opening. This opening scene, like I mean, it started out so sentimental, you know. Cirroc, or I should say, Jake is talking about, you know, the bad dream he had, and you know, Commander Sisko is reassuring him, and there's one line that they throw in there where you know who he's talking about, but they don't specifically mention it, and he's like, I miss her. And, you know, and Sisko says, I miss her too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, you know, obviously they're talking about Jake's mom. And so it kind of brings you into, like, I think that paves the way for Sisko to have a romantic, you know, relationship with Fenna.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I love her costumes in this episode as well. I think you sort of, if you have a theater background or you come from the theatrical design background, when she walks up and you see her in this flowy, it's very fantastical, has that fantasy element to it, and it's red, so it's very passionate, and it's hot, you know what I mean, and very sexy. But as you look at the way that it fits across, it's almost like she's, you know, sort of in a cage. That's how I sort of was looking at it, sort of trapped. And if you've all seen the episode, I'm just assuming we've all seen it now, that basically this is all a fantasy. Essentially, she's a projection. It turns out that she's a projection of a woman who's fully married, Nadell, right?
Yes.
And what's the basic summary of the episode is that this woman appears. She's very mysterious. Sisko is enamored with her, and then as time goes on, he's trying to learn more about her. But she's very cagey about who she is and where she comes from, and won't tell him anything about herself. And then as we follow his investigations, trying to go through Odo to get more information, thinking she's in trouble, then he actually meets the real in the flesh person and thinks it's the same person. So she introduces herself as Fenna. And then, you know, they've got this famous terraformer. It's Gideon Sayatic, I believe, right? And he's this egomaniacal, self-admittedly, like he admits it, he's a maniac, which I love. I love that. That's so brilliant. And, you know, you want to, like, you're annoyed by him. You want to feel, you get that sense that you feel just as anyone else does meeting this guy, that he's hilarious at first. He's kind of fun, but because he's
full of himself,
you know, you wouldn't want a nice place to visit, wouldn't want to live with the guy. So you don't blame Nadell for maybe being unhappy, but they don't really, the thing I find that in the episode that they don't do a lot of exploration on is why is she really so unhappy? And
they did touch on it, and maybe it's a very small line. I think it may have been where she's like passed out, Nadal is, and Fenna actually Fenna confronts Nadal physically, not, you know, they don't have a confrontation, but she sees her. He mentions that her race mates for life or marries for life, and I guess she was homesick, but she couldn't go back home because of her marriage, like something about how their race bonds or mates.
Yeah.
So I think that was that she was unhappy because she wanted to go home, but Sayatic did not want to go home or to her home because he was this traveler and scientist, and ultimately I don't know if I want to give away the ending just yet, but ultimately he, you know, makes a decision enabling her to return home.
Right. He sort of sets her free.
Yeah. Which was a great, you know, I'll save that for the end because it's interesting. It's noble. Yeah. For him, his, you know, personality.
Like, as altruistic as that guy could possibly be, and even we all knew it was still for his own glory in the sense, because he makes sure that you know, make sure it's recorded in the official record, you know, like
he's like, I'll never be forgotten now.
Yeah. Well, he was also, you know, not trying to figure out where he would go next. Like this was the big magnum opus was, you know, rebirthing this dead star, and so what was he going to do afterward? That was my question. And as far as the writing of the story elements are concerned in the episode was, well, it seems like he's kind of slowing down, because what else is he going to do after he's, you know, brought a star back from death? You know, what else is there next for him to achieve? And you could sense that he doesn't even know. And so I thought, well, maybe that'll give him an opportunity to like sort of bond with his wife, or maybe that would be the thing that kind of sort of brings him back together. He doesn't even have to necessarily sacrifice himself to actually save his marriage, but in the sense that, you know, you don't really, you have to sort of, you want to part with this guy. It's like, I wanted him to sort of go away, but at the very, you know, when you talk about spoiling the end, there's just like, there's so many good moments, but I think Sally is just, she is captivating. I mean, for the very moment that she speaks, she's very intentional. She gives these pauses, these moments to breathe between her and Sisko, and to develop that attraction. And I think that is very
an actress,
effective.
She's very intelligent. She plays well. She is clearly takes the smart roles, the in-depth roles, for everything that I've seen in some of the interviews that I've seen of her. So he definitely, and you know, the difference between Fenna and Nadal, not only is there the costuming, which is a great, like you said, Fenna was flowy, red, sexy. She kind of had this like ethereal look, and then Nadal was very strict, high collar, covered,
grays, you know, and silvers,
straight lines. They did a really great job with costuming, separating Nadal and Fenna, and of course Sally, the actress, did a great job changing the personality between the two halves of her personality or her identity.
Yeah. What were your thoughts, Melissa? Were there some moments in the episode that you really thought were just amazing, or what were your thoughts?
I loved how Sally, this is the only thing I've ever seen her in, and I think the moment she steps onto screen, she's just so striking. She's stunning, just to look at, for one thing. So she fits Fenna in this ethereal goddess type woman, and then and it comes across immediately. And I love the surprise of her not knowing, you know, that she is Nadal, and Nadal doesn't know that she is Fenna. So I loved how that played too, and the costuming as well. And I didn't realize, it didn't occur to me about the caging, which is a good thought.
Yeah, those straps across her heart, you know, over her chest, and it sort of is this indicator that she feels trapped in some way, or that she's in prison.
Right. And she certainly is a bit imprisoned. So, and then than being married to a man like Gideon, as he said, all of his previous wives had the good sense to leave him. She didn't because of her race.
Right.
In her culture, they marry for life. And, and Gideon or Sayatek had the next great adventure to achieve and accomplish, and that's what he set for his life. And I think Nadell was probably part of that great accomplishment because,
he did say she was very smart. He was like, she's smart. She's this amazing cook. She works hard at home. Like he made it a point. It was also part of his bragging rights. Like, I have this amazing wife, but
he describing how they met and making it all about how
that was terrible. That was awful. He's like, she was infatuated with me.
Well, naturally, and who wouldn't be,
And then he's like, I was surrounded by my fans. Yeah, and he said that too. He's like, but who wouldn't be?
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to hate him, but at the same time, everyone's sort of still laughing and giggling because he is amusing. He's very entertaining, has an energy, and you can tell, he's doing good things. I mean, even everyone has to admit in the room that he's like the Federation's greatest mind. So you sort of have to give him a pass at being who he is, as opposed to sort of like the opposite to that, which would have been more dangerous, like Malcolm McDowell's character in Generation, sort of more that, not psychopathic, but more like just more darker form of that same like narcissism or megalomania, but he was applying it to good things and for altruistic purposes. Ultimately, it came back to him. But it's a good episode. It's real fun. There's a great moment at the very beginning, like Heather, you mentioned, when Jake's first coming out, and he has that calculus test tomorrow, and he wakes up from this weird dream, and he doesn't even want to tell his dad about it. And then finally, Sisko's able to kind of coax it out. And then there's this beautiful moment. Cirroc captures it beautifully when he stumbles and hesitates to say, I love you. To say the words, I love you, Dad. And it just reminds me how much I love this series as a whole. It just really, they do such a wonderful job at bringing those two characters and showing what men and their sons, what fathers and son relationships can be, that you can say, I love you, and that there's no shame in that or weakness in that. And I think the delivery of it is just beautiful. And Cirroc gets a big standing ovation from me for his.
Yeah, that was great. Actually, I did some research on this episode because I really wanted to be informed, and I found out something interesting from my Star Trek Deep Space Nine companion book. That the original script was written for the role of the love interest for Fenna to be Bashir.
Oh.
And
that would have been interesting.
So, and I believe it was Ira said that they had been talking about really expanding more on Sisko. So they switched out Bashir because, Bashir's like this bumbling love idiot, and
serial monogamist.
Yeah.
They wanted to really define Sisko, and Ira is quoted as saying that they wanted to focus on the difference between Sisko and Picard. Picard is the explorer. He was, in all of the Next Generation, he really never took the time to form relationships. There may have been brief flings, but he never made the decision, I'm ready to have somebody. And Sisko, on the other hand, is a builder. He builds relationships. Yeah. He builds, his time. So Sisko is willing to form a relationship. He's already a family man. He's got his son, and so that was one thing that Ira said, that they wanted to focus on Sisko being, he's a guy who's solid and real and human. And that's exactly the quote that Ira said in the book. So they really wanted so they used this opportunity to grow Sisko's personality, I guess his backstory, which, I think really changed that episode a lot, changing it from Bashir to Sisko.
Yeah, agreed. Now I couldn't even imagine
No.
Her being infatuated.
A lot more, I think, like comedic. Like,
Yeah.
Bashir would have been seen as maybe crazy
Yeah.
because there's this woman that he's suddenly, seeing places. But Sisko, as the commander, he has that command to go to Odo and say, "Look for this woman for me," because am I going crazy? He's got that.
I know, he's like, well, what ship? I don't know. I don't know. Let me guess. You don't know. A little hump there, I love that because you see Sisko as such that young man in him, that young man in love or infatuation. And you get to see in Avery's eyes light up and all of those expressions and all that movement that he brings to it, that he sort of enlivens this infatuation that he has, and even Jake, and when they're at dinner and he's asking about it, and he's like, just so you know, Dad, you're in love, it's okay with me. And Dad's like, oh well, thank you for supporting me. Like, that's so what I would say the same thing. He's got that snarky, he's always prepared, for people to, just like when he first come in. I think it's the next episode or two. He comes into ops, and Kira looks at him like, "What's going on?" And it's second thought, right?
Because it is. I actually took notes on that scene.
I love that scene.
Yeah, it was great. Well, she comes in, and he's like, "Good morning, Major," and she's like,
"Yeah," she doesn't even say good morning to him.
I know. She's done, and then he goes and orders exactly 1 Chiralton tea with a double twist of lemon. And when he says double twist of lemon, they cut to Kira's face and she's like, what the heck is going on? And then she comes over and she's like, what's going on with you? You always drink. I can't remember exactly, but it was
I've been known you for the last year, and every day you've been coming in, and he's like, well, I can't live without I'm not fully awake yet, or something like that, without my frappuccino. And you ordered the tea, and he's like, oh, well, I suppose I wanted something different. Is that okay with you? And I loved it when she was like, oh,
her response was, of course. You can drink whatever you like. And he's like, thank you, Major. I appreciate your support.
I love that. I would have written something like that. That's the kind of writing, that zing, that he's always like making sure people understand that you understand it's okay for me to, be different or have a different taste, or, but those are great moments. I just think
I wrote down those quotes because I was like, this is great. Great interaction between Kira, and she's just kind of like, what did you just do? What did you just order? What's going on here?
And then Dax coming into it and helping him figure out what was going on and sort it all out. And when she scans her, she just comes right in and starts scanning her. I'd be like, what's going on? But it's just pure energy. And I'm just like, wow, that's a really interesting concept. But I wonder, do we all have that? Do we all have some subconscious little, projection living in our minds that we don't know about, we don't remember? I think we've all been in places where we felt, or we wish we could be a different person or have a different life. But even
that brings into astral projection. Mm-hmm. That's something that people have claimed to be able to do for many years. So, that definitely falls into that time, or into that myth of astral projection.
Yeah, and there was a moment where Gideon had said that this had happened like once before, and Nadell promised it would never happen again. But it's really hard to, keep all that inside and bury it permanently, especially when she clearly was, like you say, homesick. And even at the end, when she makes that choice to go back home, she could have stayed. She could have. I mean, Gideon was gone. He sacrificed himself. She could have mourned and and come back to the station and pursued something. But then she says, "I don't remember any of that. I don't have any memory." But it was part of her somehow. It was there along, some way buried in her subconscious. So it's really interesting that they chose to let her just walk away. And of course, if she had stayed, then we wouldn't have Penny Johnson Gerald, and we'd never have the development of that relationship. But I think it would have been really interesting to see it run a course a little bit longer and go over that arc, to see it develop and maybe not work out in the end. But it was really interesting that it all sort of wraps up very neatly, and then it's over, and you're just kind of like, oh, don't go, just stay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one scene where she disappears, where like literally in front of his eyes, he kind of like it almost looks like he's in pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he puts his hand, he puts his face in his hands and he groans and he's like I think he's questioning his like sanity for a moment. He's like, oh my god, she just disappeared right in front of me.
I think he handles it really well. He handles it really well when he meets Nadell and he thinks, oh, wait, you're married. You could have just told me. I love that moment. But he handles it so diplomatically. And I was
He didn't say anything in front of Gideon, but then later he confronts her, and you could tell he's got that attitude.
Huh?
I don't play that game, lady. And she's like,
what are you talking about?
Crazy.
Married?
I've never met you.
Yeah, it was
until this moment.
And when he even introduced her and he talks up the cooking and then he proceeds to let everybody know that they were all his recipes in the first place. So even though she made this beautiful spread for everybody, it was really still his in the end because he's the one who came up with all the recipes and everything. I'm just like, oh God, could you
bragging rights again.
Bragging. But yeah, and at the very end, and he says, "Let there be light." That little biblical reference. I just thought, oh God, there's people like that, There's people like that in the world, and they did a great job at trying to balance that and not make you completely hate him. At the same time, you definitely had that sort of, annoyed constantly, like, oh, here we go again. I love even O'Brien's face when he's talking.
Yeah, but I think they also touched on it then with the fact that he's been married multiple times, and that that's his narcissism is part of his charm, because he doesn't do it to hurt anyone else, and as you said before, to the betterment of the universe, so to say. But then after a while, that narcissism starts to lose its charm, and then starts to become exhausting because you need a lot of energy for a personality like his. So yeah.
True.
It's I didn't dislike him at all, but I understood where he was coming from, and I was impressed with the fact that he was a bit aware of what was going on and his effect on people and how it can be exhausting.
He knows he gets a pass. He knows that he gets that pass because he is changing lives. He's, making like his contribution outweighs his narcissism.
Yeah.
He knows it. So I think he doles it out nice in small increments, but it's definitely there. Like you said, it gets it. Even like I think O'Brien says later when they're like, Dax and O'Brien are sitting in the room, and he's like, "You can't push this past 9.5." And then Sayatek walks in. He says, "Hey, some people got places to go," and O'Brien says, "Good luck with that." He kind of like makes that point, like this is getting a little like you said, exhausting. Like, good luck. You got to deal with him now.
So great with Dax is, like I've been dealing with him all day long.
Yeah.
There's lots of little nuggets, even though this is a very Sisko-centric episode. There are lots of great moments for everybody else too. Even Sisko's joke to O'Brien at the beginning about, you would just hate it to have to be on a working station. You just hate it if everything worked properly. And he's like, I'd love to give it a shot, or it would be nice to have.
Yeah, there's a lot of
back to Enterprise. But.
Yeah, there's a lot of great nuggets of relationship building, and because relationship is such a big part of the show overall, and I think that's wonderful to see the nuggets.
Well, looks like we're gonna go. We're gonna go for break.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I think we're just below. We're running out of time.
More in DS9 versus Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
So
Definitely.
We have to take a short break. So we will be back to discuss more about DS9 Season 2, Episode 9, Second Sight.